Hello, I'm David Hunt and welcome to The Art Hunter. My guest today, she's a vocalist, songwriter, broadcaster, producer. There's a lot of other bits and pieces, we'll get to them. Her debut album was soul music inspired, and that's where her music sits. An internationally acclaimed live performer, supported Macy Gray, love Macy Gray, and made her UK debut at the Glastonbury Festival, then went on to a sellout at the famous London Jazz Café. Hello. Behind the scenes, artistic director of a jazz festival, champion of diversity in music industry, as she produced Women in Soul. And she's had a posting at PBS FM, like years ago. A quote, "A goddamn soul jazz powerhouse," Beat Magazine. That has all the elements of really full-on magical BBC UK. Chelsea Wilson, hello.
Hi David.
And
how
welcome
are you?
to The Art Hunter. Good.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Oh, congratulations on your career already, because you've achieved a lot. Do you feel that at times, that you've achieved a bit?
No, but I think that's probably a normal feeling for an artist, that you're just on to the next thing all the time, and trying to pause and reflect and go, oh, I actually did do something, is probably something I should do. Okay,
but the good thing is that here you are, you're a singer, a soul jazz blues singer, or not blues so much, but more funk, a lot of funk as well. Mm-hmm. So here you are, a soul singer, a little bit of jazz thrown in, a little bit of disco, funk, but you produce as well on the side. Why? Is that because it's hard being a full-time singer?
There's definitely challenges with being a performing artist, but for me personally, the reason why I do lots of different things in my career is because I'm interested and I'm curious in a lot of different facets of how the industry works. And I'm a bit of a restless personality, I guess, and have quite an active mind and a lot of ideas. And, I started broadcasting and festival directing, and I'm also a board director of Music Victoria, and have a lot of ideas for different projects that are both on and off the stage. And so I kind of like doing all the things.
Right, okay. But it's good for you as an artist, because then it gives you a better understanding of what it's all about. Because we actually met each other many years ago, and you were curious enough then to do a course learning about the business.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I always put singer first or vocalist first in my bio, because I always identify first and foremost as a musician before, the other things that I do. I was a full-time performing artist and touring artist for probably, 5 or so years. I went to the Queensland Conservatorium, and then from there I actually did some residency gigs in 5-star hotels throughout Asia, mainly in Japan. I did 3 6-month residencies where I was singing 4 sets a night, 6 nights a week.
Whoa.
Living in the hotel, and I loved it, especially as a 21-year-old. I just thought, this is the dream. I get to sing jazz 6 nights a week. I'm living in this beautiful place. I'm having an absolute ball. I was on a cruise ship for a while, around the Caribbean, as they say, an American cruise ship. I was in Dubai, Thailand, Indonesia. But, after a few years, I wanted to move back to Australia. And I guess that was a bit of a turning point for me of, the Hilton Hotel in Melbourne doesn't employ a full-time jazz singer. Mm. And so what's my next step? And I always loved the business side of the industry and artist management. And so that's why I came into the diploma course. And I think I have you to blame, really, or as my inspiration to really move into broadcasting, because getting to work with you on the communications unit that you were lecturing, I learned so much from that. And I was already listening to Joy at the time. And so when an opportunity came up at PBS, I thought, I'm going to go for this.
And you actually put me down as a referee.
Yeah,
and they,
so thank you.
And they rang and we had a chat. Did you know that?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he actually said, she's getting the job. So I knew before you.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So I was the music and interviews manager at PBS for 7 years.
Yeah. Which again would have helped so much with your career as a singer, like hearing all that music that was, passing you the music desk all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time, CD physical servicing was still the main thing.
Yep.
So I was sitting in a music library of 35,000 CDs, and each month we were sent around 450 to 500 new titles a month and around 5 to 6 copies of each one of those CDs.
Yeah.
And I had weekly meetings with all the majors and all the publicists, and so, I really got to have a really great understanding, your real eye of the storm of really getting to see the whole industry and how labels interact with media and how artists interact with media, and it was just a fantastic experience.
Yeah, or would be. So where did the idea that you would like to be a singer, performer singer, like as a kid, was a little kid that thought, this is what I want to be, Mum?
Yeah, I think I've only ever had two kind of goals in my life or things I wanted to do when I was a kid, and that was either be on radio or be a singer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the radio...
You've done them both.
Yeah, the radio thing, my granddad bought me a Walkman, it was the early 90s, late 80s, and it had a little microphone attached.
Yeah.
And so I walked around interviewing everybody.
Brilliant.
All the neighbours, and I'd cut together my little radio shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, the singing and dancing as a kid, I think I drove everyone pretty crazy with my performance antics.
Why soul music and, like heading into jazz? But soul a lot of the time is jazz music as well, isn't it? Why that form of music? Because it's not common here in Australia, is it?
And do you know what? My parents hate jazz.
Right.
Like, they hate it.
Interesting.
Most people that you meet that are jazz musicians kind of got into it through family, they sort of had to listen to it.
Yeah.
When I discovered Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday as a teenager and started listening to that at home, my parents were horrified. My mum said, I can't believe you're listening to this. This is really embarrassing. She was like, I'm embarrassed for you.
Really?
She said, this is really daggy stuff.
Oh.
That's how she described it.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to get her into jazz all these years later, and...
No.
My mum was a Sharpie. She's right into Skyhooks and and Sex Pistols and punk stuff. And my dad is a big blues fan, so jazz is always too noisy and a bit complicated for him.
Right. And a woman doing it as well is quite different. As like you were a bit groundbreaking in that respect, weren't you?
Well, I don't know if I'm groundbreaking. I mean, there's definitely, a movement and more conversations now than there was around women in music, which is great. But there's conversations around diversity and inclusivity in all aspects of the music industry, and it's a long overdue conversation. But I think particularly when it comes to female identifying artists, the APRA statistics are quite alarming, that I think there's only about 20% of APRA songwriter members that are female.
Yeah.
And out of the annual royalty payments that go to songwriters each year in Australia, only 10 to 15% of that money goes to female songwriters. 10 to 15% of all the songwriting royalties is to female writers. And also, in terms of record producers, less than 2% of record producers are female.
Yep.
So it means that nearly every song you hear on the radio is written by a man and recorded by a man. So, we've got a long way to go in terms of having stories by, different, diverse genders represented.
So here you are, you actually were forging a career for yourself as a performer, singer, and recording as well. That was one of the other things. You were actually going after money to record your first EP. I can remember that back in the day. And you decide that you want to band together with other women, which is what you were talking about, how little the percentage in songwriting and all that is done by women. Tell our viewers what you did, Women in Soul.
Yeah, the Women of Soul Collective, I guess, we started around 10 years ago now. And it was a way to put on a live show that really celebrated women in music and female songwriters. Also, it was kind of a way for us to support each other, and sort of realizing that when you put on a show, it's very expensive, especially, you know, you're paying all the musicians, and you're paying, you know, the soundy and lights. And if we could pool our resources together, then, you know, potentially we can share our audiences, put on a bigger show, generate bigger audiences than what we can on our own. And the first show we did, we sold out. And it's had a really great vibe. And over the years, it's grown to, well, let's do some songwriting together. Let's do some recording together. Let's go on tour. Let's do some other projects. And so it's kind of really grown from just a live show to, you know, a collective of people that collaborate on a deeper level.
Yeah, and the people come in and out of the group.
Yeah, because it's not a band, it's a collective. So it's kind of, you know, if people are here and they're in Australia and they want to participate and they want to be part of it, they can. But, you know, a lot of the artists have, you know, like Rita Satch spent a few years in the UK, and then she came back and did some shows with us again. And similar with Audrey Pound, who was based in New York for a little while and then came back. So, you know, it's a network of singers, really.
Now, I'm going to go back a bit. The Glastonbury Festival. Hello. A dream come true?
Yeah, I mean, what an honour and a privilege to be invited to perform at a prestigious festival that's as wild and well known as Glastonbury. But it's so hectic. Have you been?
No.
It's insane. I mean, there's 250,000 people there. And, you know, yes, I played at Glastonbury, but I'm not Kanye or Lionel Richie or any of these other acts that performed that year. I didn't get the helicopter treatment, you know. So you drive in like any other punter, and, you know, there's some volunteers like, oh yeah, park down that way sort of thing. It was an hour and a half walk from the car park to where we were camping, through mud. I've got a whole band that I've taken from Melbourne in gumboots. We've driven for 6 hours from London because the traffic was so hideous.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an independent artist, so I coordinated the tour myself. I drove the hire car. You know, we're carrying amps and cymbals, you know, this huge walk. It's wild, but, you know, incredible and really fun.
And what was the vibe like at the end of your show? You know, like, did the audience like it? Did you enjoy the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think people enjoyed it, and, you know, some people had heard my music on, you know, some radio in the UK, so there was some people there that were familiar with the songs, which is pretty amazing to go that far to the other side of the world and people have listened to your record. You know, It's very humbling.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it was great to be able to go with my band from Melbourne, you know, which was no easy feat.
Or financially.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is your producing rearing its head again. Yeah. Fantastic. So then you went into London?
Yeah, we did a few shows on that tour. So we performed at the Jazz Café in London and a few other smaller bars around the city. And then we went to Paris and did a show at the Biz Art Cafe over there, which was wonderful. And they treat you so beautifully in Paris. I mean, it was the only gig that we did where, you know, they said, well, would you like your dinner before the show or in the interval? And we were like, there's dinner? You know, and they brought out wine and there was these beautiful baguettes and dinner. And then after the show, the booking manager brought champagne over and said, I want to say congratulations on your first show in Paris. So here's some champagne. And she bought my record. And, you know, it was really incredible.
And again, what was the crowd like there? You know, like, did they respond to it? You know, like, do they like that, you know, as a novelty, somebody from Australia?
I think so. I just felt awful because I don't really speak any French, and I've been to Paris 4 times now, and I'm pretty sure my French is getting worse the more time I spend there, because I attempt something and they're like basically just like forget it. So the audience were very gentle with me on that, and, you know, the booking manager said, you know, most of the people will speak English, so if you just speak slowly, they should get what you're talking about. And they did. You know, people responded. They laughed at, you know, the jokes I made, or you know, they clapped at the places that made sense to clap. So you know, it was great.
Yeah.
It was a strange one sound wise for the band. It was, they had they didn't want us to have any amps on stage, and they had one of those perspex screens in front of the drummer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like they do in churches.
Yeah.
And they gave the guitarist and bass player headphones, and there was no monitors, and they hated it because, you know, guitarists, they like amplifiers and they want to push pedals, and they were like, no, we control this up the front. And, you know, a guitarist especially is so controlling over when they want these certain sounds. But for me, it was the best night of the tour for my singing because I could hear myself so perfectly.
Whoa.
It was quiet on stage. It was so quiet. I could just hear myself and the keyboard, and I was like, this is amazing. I can really sing tonight, you know. And then as soon as I got home, I started Googling those perspex screens. Like, I need to buy one of these because it makes my singing better, you know. I never bought one, but they weigh a ton, I think, as well. But the band hated it, but for me, it was the highlight of the tour.
It was almost like in a recording studio.
It really was.
Do they record there? You know, do you know if they didn't find it out?
No, they weren't recording then. You know, streaming wasn't really a thing then either, you know.
Yeah. And let's talk about that, recording. You've made quite a few recordings now, haven't you? And you did one that was a bit of a disco, and even over our shoulder, you're kissing a mirror ball in one of the shots.
I love disco. I love dancing. I love that whole era. If I had an opportunity to go in the TARDIS, I would be at Studio 54. That is...
Oh, who wouldn't?
That is where I'd go. You know, absolutely. I love that whole era, the fashion, the music. You know, it was just this amazing, joyous time, and a very freeing time, I think, as well. And the music from that era, Patrice Rushen and Chic, you know, the classic stuff, the more underground records. I was listening to a lot of that music at the time, and I wanted to make an album that was really joyous and that you could dance to every song on the album. And I didn't care about being radio friendly, which is stupid as an artist, but that's what I wanted to do creatively. So some of the songs go for 7-8 minutes. I was inspired by those long edits of songs, you know, the old 12-inch where it was, you know, it's a Chic song, it's going for 10-12 minutes, you know, and I was thinking that's what I had in mind when I made the record. But what's different about the album is that it's all recorded with a live band. There's no click tracks, there's no drum machines. It's not like Daft Punk's disco thing. There's no programming. It's a lot of jazz musicians that I made play disco.
Yeah. and you see, back in that era, you know, like the real disco era, out of Europe and Germany, and for instance, they were bands. They were live bands, weren't they? Yeah. So, you know, like it was the Americans that tend to overdub it and whatever, and the English love to do that as well. So did it do okay for you? Were you happy with what it achieved for you, and considering that it was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, stylistically, I love the record, and it was a real, you know, moment for me in my life. And I guess my first album's called I Hope You'll Be Very Unhappy Without Me.
Yep.
So there's a certain bitterness to that record. And so fast forward...
Was that personal?
It's very personal.
Yeah, so it's something that happened to you?
It's very...
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And fast forward a few years, I was in a really happy relationship with an incredible person that I'm now married to. And so I think Chasing Gold, which is the title of that second album, you know, it's this kind of joyous celebration, and you can hear all these lush strings, and I'm dancing and I'm happy. So, you know, it sort of went from all black and white photography and, you know, some angry lyrics to I'm seeing pink and I'm having a great time, and, you know, that's where I was at the time. And I think as an artist, you know, if you're trying to think about what the commercial outcomes might be from a project, you're probably never going to be satisfied, because if that's what you're after, I think you have to make the work that you want to make and hope that, you know, that people respond to it. Well,
that's where, you know, like being, it sounds impressive, but being on a major record label is that there's too much pressure on you. You know,
So much pressure.
Yeah, and yes, you might get the money and the support, but if it doesn't work, you're dropped, and and then you often owe them all the money anyway. So what's the point?
It's getting so intense in that major label arena now as well, with how you are judged by your social media, that if you're not getting a certain percentage of engagement, they're not going to release the next single. They're waiting to see how many hundreds of thousands of followers you can get before you can release the single. So there's a completely different expectation on what your numbers are looking like in that world that comes before the music, which I understand it's a cutthroat business.
Yep.
But yeah, it means that people have to make very tough decisions. So it depends on what you're after.
Yeah. Have you worked out what's next musically for an album, or are you just happy coming out of lockdown? You wouldn't have been performing very much anyway, but was there stuff that you were thinking about in lockdown that you thought, I think I might want to try this next?
I actually just finished, we're in the mixing stages at the moment of a new Women of Soul album.
Oh, excellent.
So we recorded that, produced with Anna Laverty just recently. So that features Kylie Aldis, Stella Angelico, myself, a bunch of different singers. And I think it's going to be an Australian first that it's composed and produced by an all-female identifying team.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we've got a 14-piece band, string section, harp, percussion, the rhythm section. It's a 10-track album. So throughout the lockdowns, I coordinated a songwriting project that involved over 25 female songwriters across Melbourne.
Yeah.
And we wrote a whole body of work. And then, we worked on recording. So that's going to come out. But I'm yet to record my jazz album, so that's definitely in the future.
Right. Hold on. Let's go back to that, because I'm really keen with the Women of Soul. Congratulations. It sounds like a brilliant project, this new album. Are you going to tour it?
Yeah.
With all those people on stage?
Well, as many as we can afford to fly around the country, and but yes, that's the plan.
But you will tour beyond Melbourne with it? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we did Melbourne Recital Centre and the Elizabeth Murdoch Hall for Women's Day this year, which was incredible. So for me, that felt like, that's a real accomplishment, that it went from a grassroots thing that we were doing in some clubs in Paran to being able to build it up to performing at, one of the most prestigious venues in Melbourne. And that was really beautiful.
Have you got an idea of where you want to launch the album? No?
Oh, well, good question. I know there's so many places. Somewhere we can dance, preferably, would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but you want to keep that undercover at this stage until it's all...
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
All right, so we'll go back now to the jazz album that you've never recorded that you want to. Standards?
I think every singer that sings jazz and loves jazz wants to do a standards album. That's something that is hard to resist doing. But, my friend and mentor, Paul Grabowski, he said to me, Chels, no, don't do a standards album. You've got to write some tunes. So, I am writing, but I think, it's a slow process. The soul and pop disco writing comes to me a lot quicker than the jazz.
Okay.
I'm probably just a harder critic on myself, I think, when it comes to writing jazz.
But the fact is, Chelsea, why don't you just write one here, wait another year or so, write another one there.
There's no hurry.
There's no rush, because you're doing all this other stuff in between.
Jazz is going nowhere.
Jazz is going absolutely nowhere. And enjoy every moment of what you're doing. Can't wait to come and see you live with all those women on stage. I hope you've got 20 or 30 of them on stage for the Melbourne gig. And congratulations again on a wonderful career that you're forging ahead for yourself, by yourself, and with all the producing as well. So Chelsea, congratulations.
No, thanks, David. Appreciate it.
You've been watching The Art Hunter. I'm David Hunt, and we'll be back again next week.